Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been having an amazing couple of days. I know there has been a lot of stuff happening, so I'll try to make it as short and sweet as I can and impactful as I can. I'm Andrea. I lead the investment team for Plug and Play in Saudi Arabia. Plug and Play is a global venture capital firm, and we cooperate with many of the government entities here in the region. We're very lucky for that. What I'm going to talk about today is the PropTech ecosystem globally and how global trends are affecting the ecosystem in Saudi Arabia, and how altogether we can transition to a more collaborative approach for the ecosystem in Saudi, for the PropTech ecosystem in Saudi, and we can create even more impact just by altogether joining forces. So if we look at the market, at the PropTech ecosystem globally, the capital deployment from VCs has slowed down. This, of course, was due to the increased interest rates, inflation as well. So VCs have been reallocating money into different industries, or if they've kept on investing in PropTech, they've been looking for more cost-effective and efficiency-effective solution in which to deploy capital. Globally, again, if we look at the bigger picture, we have most of the capital deployed comes from the US. So if we look at the total funds deployed, about 11 billion in 2023, we see that 50 to 60% comes from the US, following 20 to 30% from Europe, rest comes from India and China, and only a small percentage of capital has been deployed in PropTech in the region. If we look at globally, PropTech globally, we've seen 4 major trends emerging. These trends globally, again, primarily coming from the US, have been also translating here in Saudi Arabia. So we have property management, we have digital twins technology, decarbonization. I think in Saudi we have very good examples for that. If we want to mention NEOM, for example, aiming at net zero after all the completion of the works, and then robotics as well. If we want to do a quick deep dive into each and every one of these major trends and how they're also translating into the Saudi market, the property management, we've seen AI. You know, AI is basically the buzzword of 2023 and 2024. We've seen AI impacting tremendously the property management segment of PropTech, whether it's property insights, fraud detection, tenant experience, or property operations. There has been a sort of like across the board adoption and utilization of AIs. You need to think that globally 23% of property management professionals are currently using AI, and 30% are in the plan to adopt it in the next 6 to 12 months. So opportunities there also for the kingdom are tremendous. Digital twin technology, it's one of the other big trends in the region. If we don't know what digital twins is, it's basically creating a digital copy of an already existing construction sites. And we have seen startups in the global scene taking care of the predictive maintenance, building performance, and performance management space. Decarbonization, if you look at the European market, 75% of houses in Europe are not energy efficient. And those houses are expected to be up and running and utilizable until 2050. So it's a huge problem. And I think we're very proud. We need to be very proud about being in the region, because net zero, it's one of the priorities of the region as well. And then we have robotics. Specifically this trend is focusing both on human capabilities, so exoskeleton that can support workers on the construction site, but as well AI, machine learning. It's one of the big trends that we see across the board. So all these on a global scale, but how these global trends and the market growth has been translating into our home market, MENA and GCC. So if we want to look at GCC or MENA, so MENA, the industry has been growing at a 25-30% compound annual growth rate. So remarkable growth in the entire MENA region, with Saudi specifically and UAE in second place, being the forefront of growth. Saudi, of course, we all know, Qiddiya, NEOM, and the Red Sea are the giga projects that are driving this innovation, and why the PropTech space is growing so fast in Saudi, because of the need for digitalization and the need of implementing innovative solution in what is by default an industry that has always been lacking the relationship with the digital side of things. So if you look at this specific slide, you see, a compound annual growth rate, double digits. You might assume that the industry is growing very fast, which is true, and also capital deployment from capital providers, venture capital firm, goes the same way. In reality, it's a bit, the opposite. If we look at VC funding in MENA for PropTech over the past 5 years, We've seen a drop in terms of the number of deals that VCs are doing in the space, even though the ecosystem as a whole and the industry as a whole is growing. And we've seen also less capital to be deployed in the industry. This is a trend that we've noticed at MENA level, while instead in Saudi, Saudi as well is following the trends of the region with less deals compared to previous years and also less capital deployed. So the industry is growing. That's for sure. We've seen again before in the slides before 20 to 30% compound annual growth rate, but the capital deployers are not really investing in the startup ecosystem. The little capital that gets deployed in the ecosystem goes primarily to early stage investment. So if we can do an initial analysis on MENA and then we will move to Saudi, we can see how in 2024, 50% of the capital deployed out of the 69 million that we saw before has been deployed in rounds of 0 to 1 million, meaning that VCs are not investing in mature opportunities, but are trying to spot the next technology and joining early stage rounds. If we look at Saudi, for example, in this case, Saudi follows the exact same trends that MENA is following, with 57% of capital allocated to PropTech being deployed only in 0 to $1 million tickets, which is a very, very, very beginning of the ecosystem. If we look at where capital deployers are deploying capital in MENA, we can see that property marketplace, and we saw it before, it's the major industry. So global trends are applying to MENA and are applying to Saudi as well, which is a good indicator that even our region is following global trends. And we can see it also for the Saudi market. So what is the data basically telling us? A lot of graphs, I know we're all tired, boring stuff for the most, but what is really the industry telling us? That capital is only being deployed at early stage. So there is a huge attention to early stage, but there is no real nurturing of the ecosystem from early stage to more mature stage of the ecosystem. Most notable investor, if you're familiar with the VC landscape, you can see, Wide, Aramco, big, very early stage fund, plus VC, 500 Global Fund 6 Lab, they're all early stage investor, which basically backs up what we saw before, which is basically, again, funding only at the very early stage and not at more mature stages. And we see also the same for Saudi, same kind of names, same kind of stages. So everyone is basically investing less in terms of capital deployed in the market, in terms of deal done, and also in terms of stages where capital deployers are deploying capital. So what is this telling us to the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in Saudi? The main takeaway is that the ecosystem is technically still very early stage. So this is why VCs and capital deployers are trying to prioritize this specific segment. And this can also tell us one more thing, that all the initiatives that have been done for this specific sector, for the PropTech sector, or generally for the ecosystem overall, are standalone, siloed initiative. A lot of push from government entities, which is amazing, very little interaction from the private sector, and everything that has been done so far again, is silos into around specific partners or specific players, which limits the opportunity for the upscale potential of these venues. So what we dream of at Plug and Play is the creation of a more collaborative ecosystem, where not only a specific entity is coming up with an initiative, but more entities can collaboratively come together and help the ecosystem thrive and grow. For us, it's not only talk. We're dreaming about this ecosystem. This is a fantasy thing. As Plug and Play, we've been doing this across the globe. This is one of the main examples of us building an ecosystem around a specific vertical. So this is an example coming from Germany. In Germany, Plug and Play has what we call Startup Autobahn, which is basically Startup Highway. Over the years, this initiative started in 2016. Over the years, we've been able to start from a small ecosystem of 3 partners that really believed in the idea of developing innovation together, to move to an ecosystem of 30+ partners that collaboratively come together to support startups to get the best advantage and competitive advantage by working directly with innovators. And again, this can sound super fancy, a lot of words, but what are the real results? I'll show you concrete examples. And I need you guys for this one. How many of you own a Mercedes or owned a Mercedes in the past, let's say, a couple of years? I can see one hand over there. Someone else? Have you been driving a Mercedes recently? Yes, no, I can see some hands, perfect. I'm asking you why, because if you have noticed something by driving a Mercedes, is that within the car, there's almost no noise. Like you don't feel any kind of noise within the car. And you might think, okay, maybe the engineering team at Mercedes, they're pretty skilled, which they are, but this is because of us as well. Because we facilitated the introduction between Mercedes-Benz and this startup called For Silence. The technology that this company was building is basically aimed at recognizing leakage of sound and also where the origin of the sound is coming from. So the team at For Silence and the team at Mercedes came together, worked together, and made possible that whenever you're driving your super fancy Mercedes, you don't hear any sound coming from within the car. And this is only one of the hundreds of pilots and projects that we've been supporting startups doing with the private sector and the public sector. We see an ecosystem, again, where all players are coming together, not only developing the Saudi ecosystem and Saudi technology, but also making sure that the global sphere, the global ecosystem is looking at Saudi with interest, that global technologies are coming to Saudi, are integrating with the market, are generating jobs, and are bringing best practices. And hopefully, we will reach a maturity level of the ecosystem where also Saudi technology will be comfortably deployed and brought outside. This is our big ambition, and this is what we're really working hard for. So I want to leave you with a call to action. I said before I wanted to make it super fast and short because, again, it's the end of the day. We've been having 2 hectic days. The call to action is very simple for me. Over the past 2 days, you've been attending speeches, keynotes, you've been roaming around. Most likely, you've been sitting next to a lot of innovators without even knowing them, without the ability to spot them, or even if you were talking to them and realized they were innovators, maybe you couldn't really understand how to collaborate with them. So whether you are a member of the academia, whether you're a member of a capital provider, a private sector corporation, an ecosystem builder by default, or you're part from government sector, we really want to incentivize you to get our help. Let's work together and create an ecosystem where all these players that you see over there can benefit from some of the innovators that I put on the screen and many more, an ecosystem where not only startups get benefits from interaction with the private sector, but also the private sector gets more competitive and advanced by working with these amazing innovators that you can see on your screen. Thanks a lot.